Mizzou football's NIL game is very real, but at the same time on the field, it ultimately means a heck of a lot of nothing. I'll explain what I'm talking about right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And coming up later on the program, going to join an actual attendee at the UMass Missouri game, a fellow mafioso, my old buddy Pat Lynch. We're going to talk about his thoughts from 1,200 miles away about the program, the UMass game, all that good stuff. Before I start the program, though, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And one notable thing that I didn't get to on Saturday's post-game episode following the UMass ball game, I didn't get to talk about the left guard usage by Missouri, and Mitchell Walters, well, ended up, if you look at the snap counts, you'd think, well, he basically split snaps with Caden Green in the ball game. But really, if you look at it a little more closely, if you look who had the first string snaps versus the second string snaps, well, Mitchell Walters seemed to more or less take over that first string role, at least in the UMass game. So that's certainly going to be a position to watch moving forward here. I've mentioned several times how I felt like the left side of that Missouri offensive line has definitely struggled to gel and come together here this season. Of course, Green being the transfer from Oklahoma, Marcus Bryant, also a transfer at left tackle as well. And while I think Brady Cook himself definitely shoulders some of the blame for Missouri's problems with pressure, without a doubt, the quarterback, generally speaking, has a lot more to do with the pressure and sack rates, that type of thing, then I think fans realize, where on the other side of the equation, in the running game, I think the offensive line has more to do with the success of individual running backs than I think the fans tend to realize. But why this is really notable to me, of course, this offseason, well, Oklahoma and Missouri fans online were butting heads, going back and forth about Caden Green, and a lot of Oklahoma fans were saying, hey, the only reason he transferred is because of NIL money and all this kind of stuff, this, that, and the other. But regardless, no matter how much you buy into that particular narrative, certainly I can pick nits with it all you want, but the reality is Caden Green, I'm sure, got a nice NIL package to come to Missouri, at least as part of his transfer there. I don't have any questions about that whatsoever. The good news is, I think if you're a Missouri fan, there's a couple things here. Well, number one, I guess before I even get into the good news, I guess it is kind of bad news when one of your transfers from the open market, Caden Green, one of your real priority guys there, maybe hasn't been quite up to snuff so far. So obviously that's not good news. But there is good news on this front, though, in my opinion, because, number one, we haven't seen any indications, and we've seen this in many other programs, but I've seen no indications that anybody on the Missouri side, in terms of its NIL infrastructure, has missed a payment or has lied about anything or has broken its word or its contract or anything like that. We've seen plenty of examples of that throughout the country, including at Florida this offseason famously. Haven't heard any whispers about that for Missouri. So not only is Missouri very competitive in the space, it seems like by all accounts the Tigers are an honest broker in this whole thing as well. But the good news is, I think the way that Missouri can really take advantage of this is, hey, be honest, make sure you're being upfront with all the players and that they get everything that they've been promised. But then on the other side of the equation, you got to have performance as well. It can't just be, hey, and you see this in the NFL all the time. Of course, take Patrick Mahomes, for example. Obviously, he's not off to the best start this season. I don't hear any Chiefs fans calling for Carson Wentz to get the start yet, and for good reason. The point is, Patrick Mahomes, not only because he's makes a bajillion dollars, but obviously he's got 3 Super Bowls in the bag. He's going to get a lot longer leash. He has enough margin for error. He could probably play terribly for 2 or 3 straight seasons before the Chiefs considered moving on. Well, I'm glad that that's not the case at Missouri and with Caden Green. Number one, well, there's no history there with Caden Green, but most importantly, the point here is I'm glad that the money is not a huge factor here. I'm glad the fact that, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that Caden Green's probably got a healthier NIL package than Mitchell Walters. And yet, Missouri, obviously, and Eli Drinkwitz saying, hey, we're willing to play who the best player is. We don't care if this upsets the apple cart. You need to be happy with what you've been promised because you weren't promised playing time. You weren't promised snaps or a role or anything like that. You may have been promised a car, you may have been promised a few $100,000, whatever that is. Hey, take it and enjoy it. But that doesn't mean you're guaranteed a spot on this team. At least that's the pretty obvious signal I'm seeing from the Tigers, and it's certainly one that I applaud. Now, while certainly a lot of Missouri fans, including myself, were a bit down on the Tigers following its embarrassing loss in College Station, well, the reality is I think the upper echelon of college football the gap is not quite as wide as I would have thought. And, well, for example, Vanderbilt won again. You would have thought, and certainly my friends over at FanDuel seem to signal this with a 2-touchdown spread nearly between Kentucky and Vanderbilt. But for the Commodores to go on the road after beating Alabama last week, it just shows that in Alabama, by the way, kind of squeaking out a game against South Carolina this week, just goes to show you just about everything is possible right now in the SEC and in college football in general. So what that really means to me is that if Missouri holds serve the rest of the season, the Tigers are about a 6-point favorite last time I saw against Auburn this week on homecoming. Well, let's say the Tigers win that game, lose in Tuscaloosa, and then say they win their final 4 games, which there's a decent chance they're going to be favored in each one of those ball games. So again, the Tigers just essentially hold serve, go 10-2. Well, I think maybe beginning of the season, a lot of people thought that, well, with this schedule, I don't know about 10-2. And if anything, this schedule has looked a little bit more manageable at the moment with the Oklahoma Sooners not looking so hot, Mississippi State looking pretty terrible, although they hung in there again. Back to my point of on any given Saturday, it seems like anything is possible at this point. Hung in there fairly competitively with Georgia this past weekend. So again, I'm making a lot of assumptions there by saying, well, what if Missouri holds serve? The point is not only is everything out in front of the Tigers, but a 10-2 record and a playoff appearance may be more likely than what we're thinking. I'm not saying I'm betting the farm on it on anything like that, but the idea that, well, Missouri fans should give up after one disappointing loss really goes against the spirit and purpose of the 12-team playoff. And I'll say this again, with the way the season is played out so far, I'm expecting more unexpected results, meaning that 10-2, regardless of strength of schedule in the Southeastern Conference, is going to be looking like a playoff bid, in my opinion. I said that all offseason, more often than not, maybe 90% chance 10-2 will get Missouri in. I came off that number a little bit. I think I'm more back to, 85, 90%. 10-2 would get Missouri into the college football playoff. So you can be a little bit disappointed about the start, but don't give up, Tiger fans. Still plenty of football to be played. And coming up on the program, I want to invite my old buddy Pat Lynch onto the program, one of the funniest and most knowledgeable sports fans that I know, a big-time Mizzou guy. I want to ask him about his 1,200-mile view of the Mizzou football season and program. Also, Pat's a huge college basketball guy. Got to ask him his thoughts about Tiger basketball as well. But first, let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And I'm just telling you from experience, you're going to want to find the right people. When you find the wrong people, they're going to make your life miserable. Don't do it. Instead, you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, where 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, joining me now, Pat Lynch, an actual patron in Amherst, UMass, for this previous football game. Pat, I just want to quickly start with, of course, every Missouri fan's favorite topic right now, Brady Cook. How'd you feel like Brady played in the UMass ball game?
You know, you got to couch all this by saying it's UMass. You know what I mean? Like they are really, I mean, I'm not trying to pile on here, but like, it's the bottom of the barrel in FBS. And, I think like, if you really want to nitpick, if you really want to dive in, like, yeah, there were some spots there where you like one play that jumps to mind. After the flag interception, we get that chance to maybe take one crack at the end zone in the second half. Hung onto the ball way too long, in which again, I didn't go back and watch the all 22, but it felt like, dude, you just got to get that out of bounds. You know what I mean? You just got to do that, but it's like, he was connecting with passes a little bit. We were moving the ball downfield. I mean, I don't think this is the game where you really kind of look and say like, well, is Brady Cook doing it for us or not? It's like, it's
right.
UMass. I think, again, we were, there weren't any real spectacular, great downfield, passing plays, but at the same time, he took care of the ball for the most part. We moved the offense down the field. We put 45 points on the board. Are we okay with that? I don't know. I think generally, I mean, I tell you, just anecdotal evidence, some of the people in my section weren't super happy with Brady Cook this weekend. But I think it's also like, what are your priors on Brady Cook right now? I think is a lot of it's like, if you didn't like Brady Cook coming into this game, I think you probably are still upset. If you're fine, or at least like, accepting of where he's at, then I think that's also fine. I think that's probably, it's a lot of confirmation, I think is probably what came out of Saturday.
Yeah, I think a lot of confirmation bias either way for sure. And I'm totally with you on that end of half moment. I thought it sort of encapsulated just a little bit of hesitation, I think, from Cook so far here early in the young season. And so I thought it was good. I think it is the final drive for Missouri. Not like Missouri, it was a quick drive, quick touchdown drive, but it just felt like those balls were coming out quickly to Brett Norfleet. It just felt like suddenly there was a little bit of rhythm there. Hopefully Missouri can carry that over for sure. But just generally speaking, I assume it was by the way, Pat is a Burlington, Vermont area guy, made the drive over to Amherst. I assume that was a pretty drive this time of year, but what were your general just thoughts and experiences at the game?
Yeah, well, shout out to New England Tourism this weekend. Boy, it was amazing, actually. And it was a great day, too. It was about 65 degrees, 67 degrees and sunny in Amherst, which for October 12th, right now, today, it's 43 and rainy in Burlington. Right. So it gives you a rough idea of how lucky we got. But no, it was great. It's just give a little frame of reference. It's a little under 3-hour drive from where I live, which is, if you ever go to Faroe from Springfield, Missouri, it's like, that's about the commute right there.
Sure.
But yeah, it was interesting. It's definitely like, it's a small time stadium. And I use that word loosely in the sense that I feel like a stadium should at least be connected on both sides, and it's not really, but it's, but no, the experience was good. First of all, great black and gold turnout this weekend. A ton. I mean, we sat on the visiting sideline. It was nothing but Mizzou fans generally around me, or at least like, it felt like 2-1, on that side of the field. So, and I think if you probably go back and watch some replays and see some of the wide angle shots, you can really see the the Mizzou fan turnout from that. And so, I mean, and it was a mix. It was a great mix of people who traveled in, great mix of people like me who are kind of regional locals who had a chance to, dive in. So, but no, I actually, I give my hat to UMass. I mean, I've really never been to a sporting event down there. It was nice. It was generally easy to get in, easy to park, easy to get in the stadium. Easy to, I mean, you can walk right down to field level, which is pretty wild. I mean, it was really it was actually, I shared on my Twitter feed, but I ran into Chris Trevino for the first time in 20 years, which was nice.
That's awesome.
Former KOMU guy right here. So I used to work for Chris. And but like the reason I was able to do that is because I was literally able to walk right up to Chris and be like, hey, Chris, like, because he was right there on the field, and so was I. So but yeah, it's an open air.
A really unique experience for an SEC squad, and for a Mizzou fan, I would say for sure, just a little closer access, look at the team, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the parallel I drew before the game was like, pick your favorite like stadium rock band, whether it's Metallica or Foo Fighters or Taylor Swift or something like that. And it's like, and then imagine they came to your like high school prom. Like that was kind of like,
I got played at the Blue Note or something.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, oh, wow. This, thing that you can normally see amongst, 60 to 100,000 people. It's like, is playing at this like intimate venue where there's tickets were 16,000. It was less than that, I would say. But it was just like, it was pleasant. It was nice. It was like, everyone was, the whole process was good. It was just great. Our seats were nice. It was a really great experience. And I think everyone that made the trip, got something good out of it that weekend. I think we all had a great time, and I tip my hat to UMass in that regard.
Yeah, I had a similar experience a few years ago in BC, really. Just a good time, and definitely a different experience. Not quite as intimate as UMass, that's for sure. But, one thing, just back to the game, I noticed some Missouri people on the beat when the Tigers were up 28-3. UMass had a really effective fake punt play that got maybe 25, 30 yards, got them into the red zone there before that Corey Flagg interception. From your perspective, of course, I'm watching it on the game, or I'm watching it on the television screen. It didn't look like that was like an obvious fake to me. Some people on the Mizzou beat were going, boy, they really telegraphed that one. Did you see anything on that particular play?
I mean, I didn't. I thought it was a pretty and actually then I went back and saw the replay and I'm like, wow, that's actually like, it's a nice play. It was a good play. I
thought so too.
Like, it was well designed. Like it was, I mean, again, I didn't heed the words of every high school football coach in America. I didn't watch the fake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't, guys, watch the fake.
Every time.
I think that's what happened. Someone didn't yell it that time. And we got
that must have been it. Somebody forgot to yell the thing. Yeah.
Get drink on the watch the fake guy. But, I thought it was just a well-run play that we kind of got burned on. And, maybe considering the circumstances, short yardage, that part of the field.
Sure. The spot I could see was maybe a little obvious.
Maybe we should have been a little higher on that. But I think we just got caught napping. And I don't know. Again, maybe people saw something. Maybe if you were up high, maybe you saw something I didn't. But we were, we were low. We were on about row 5, and I didn't, nothing really keyed in right away. So
I'm curious, Pat, I know you're a huge Missouri fan, but this is actually the first Missouri game you've attended in about 20 years or so. So I know you're just going to have a little bit different perspective than somebody who's just deep in it in Boone County like I am. So what's your perspective just on this season so far and the Missouri and just, Drinkwitz, the program in general?
Sure. Yeah. I've had a chance to watch a bunch of the games this year. I missed A&M last week. Sounds like I didn't miss much.
No, you didn't.
So it's all
Good
right.
One to skip.
Yeah. But I certainly watched a lot of last year too, which was nice. It was great. I mean, last year, admittedly, again, I've been, a fan since I enrolled as a freshman in 1999. And, last year was really, I think, invigorating in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of people share that sentiment where it's like, I've always liked football. I've always been proud of the football team, really enjoy the football team. But 6-6 wears on you after a while, and you just kind of but we became appointment television last year. It was like, oh wow, like I've got to get to, we got to watch the game. We got to get in on the game. We got to buy in on this because it was obviously, a magical year last year. And, I think like my other people, I had pretty high expectations for us this year. I mean, I normally don't go down, pen and ink in predictions, but I thought this could be a 10-2 team looking on the schedule, and looking at what we had back. And I think so far we've been fine. I mean, I think we've been fine. And now granted, some of those teams that I think we thought we were going to, mudhole are actually looking really good. I mean, obviously, like, no one gets to make fun of Vanderbilt anymore.
Yeah,
Not this
certainly
year.
not this season.
And I think, BC had been played well earlier in the season. And obviously, we got over the win with Air. I think obviously, the A&M game was a real disappointment just because I think even if you thought maybe we might lose that game, which I did, I thought that was a toss-up game. And, Kyle Field's tough, but like,
sure.
I thought we would not lose by, 30 plus. That was really a bummer,
Hopefully A&M's just better than maybe we thought, I guess is the hope, but maybe we just played our worst game of the year. But yeah, I didn't see that one coming, obviously.
Or sometimes you run 10,000 simulations and you get it handed to you. Yeah. That's what happens. So
totally.
It is exciting. I mean, it's been really exciting about the program. I think, I do think Drinkwitz has something nice going here. I think there's a little bit of urgency too. I can understand too with this team where you're like, obviously, Burton's going soon, Cook's going soon. I mean, like some of these guys who we're really comfortable with, and there's going to be a turnover, and that will be the next phase to see how do we sustain this and how do we keep this going. Did we get like fortunate with, a great people at the great time and it worked, or is this a thing we can keep going? But as someone who was a little skeptical of him early on, just because, again, I wasn't sure he had a lot of experience coming in. I wasn't sure that he was quite ready for the bright lights. He has certainly, you can't take last year away from him. And I think, again, and we're 5-1 right now. And now should we be 5-1? Yes. But like, we are 5-1. We're not Florida State. You know what I mean? Like we're not some of these teams that, came in really highly regarded and have really looked rough. And so, but again, the last 6 games are going to tell everything. I think this Saturday's a really winnable game. And I think we really probably gotta have that one if we really have aspirations of anything, monumental this season. It's got to be there. So
for sure.
So we'll see. I mean, it's easy to call a game like UMass like a get right game, but you can't really call it that until we see if we get right. And that's we don't see it that week. We see it next week. And so
I think the Auburn game will tell a tale for sure. That's a game Missouri should win, but Auburn is not without talent. They've had horrible turnover problems, but if they can just take care of the ball, a big if, no doubt. But if they can give Missouri some problems for sure. But and coming up, I got to talk some hoops with Pat as well. What does Pat make of Dennis Gates with these very, disparate 2 seasons to the start of his Missouri career? Let's talk about that in just a second. First, though, let's talk about Gametime, because this time of year, whether it's sports, concerts, comedy, I love live events. I really do, especially the outdoor stuff during the fall season. Well, Gametime is the easiest place to get your last-minute tickets to any of these type events, including homecoming this weekend. Yes, tickets will not be cheap, but Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It'll make it easy to get through all the fluff, find exactly the best deals according to Gametime's algorithm. Really, this is the best way to go to find all last-minute tickets to your events, including homecoming. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. You know what? Even though Pat was at college football this past weekend, he's probably as big of a college basketball fan as I know as well. You may have seen this morning. The Tigers in KenPom, the old KenPom projections were out. Tigers 13th in the SEC, but 53rd overall. A lot of depth in the SEC, apparently. That's the first thing I thought. But what do you make of Dennis Gates and the Dennis Gates experience so far? Obviously, a great first season, a horrible second season. What's your take?
I think a few things. I think, number one, I think this is something where it's a little just too early to tell. And it's tough because, like, again, certainly, this modern basketball, modern college football, where again, with the transfer portal is so active and you really have this ability to turn things on a dime or have it turn against you, and I think obviously, I think some choices were made prior to last season that clearly didn't work, and clearly, also some guys were out and we missed some things. We should have won a game last year in the SEC. I mean, I think that's I don't think it's a very big expectation to say that. But I think that said, I mean, on paper, I think he's gone out and fixed some things. I think, I really, I like the pieces we put together for this season. I think, we have some potential there to get back at least on the right track. But I think it's kind of hard, again, when you kind of look into his background a little bit, it's a little bit hard to tell where the consistency is in his career. I think Cleveland State was a little bit up and down too with him, and it's like he had some really good teams that everybody also like has some teams that maybe, like you thought would have been better, and so, yeah, we'll see. I think
my big thing with Dennis Gates, and I'm curious with you, I think you look at the Missouri projections here from KenPom, 39th in offense, 75th in defense. Frankly, if Missouri finishes 75th nationally in defense this year, that will be a massive improvement. They've been about 180 his first 2 seasons. And unless you're an absolute elite, like top 5, top 10 type of offensive team, you're not going to make the tournament with that type of defense. Is this just a Dennis Gates type of problem, or was it maybe just circumstances the first couple years?
Well, and that's what you wonder. And I'd have to really dig back a little bit into into his past stops and kind of maybe suss some things out. But you're right. Even when we were good, we're not nobody talks about our defense. Right. I mean, like, it's not, that's, it's obviously you talk more about it when we're losing because it's not there. When we're winning, it kind of just masks the fact that it's not really there. So yeah, I mean, some coaches just don't coach defense. I mean, right. That's very flippant to say, but like,
certainly Gates does. He's admittedly says he's more of an offensive coach. He's going to emphasize, like, I want a guy who can score more than a guy who can, right. grab 10 rebounds a game.
I should say some coaches don't emphasize defense, and that's, whereas obviously some guys do, but again, on the offense, it's watching paint dry, but again, there's a million ways to win. But you have to find one of them. And, right. It's great if you're going to score a bunch of points, and it's great if you're going to be a high offensive team, but it's the net result. Your defense can't be so bad. You cannot be a negative defensive team like that, because you can score all the points in a row. You're not going to win. I mean, listen, Grinnell College in Division III scores 150 points a game. They don't go undefeated, and there's a reason for that, so, but no, I think, again, and if you don't do it yourself, you got to find someone who does. Bring someone in on staff who's going to handle that responsibilities. But you got to get guys to buy in at least as an improvement, because you're right, you'll start seeing the wins if you can at least. Again, it should be not a big thing to do if you can improve marginally in that regard. Like, and there's a lot of room for it. Like, you'll see the output on the other end.
Yeah, I'd just like to see Missouri maybe be a little bit less aggressive defensively. It just seems like our principles the last couple years have been, hey, let's just junk up the game. Let's go for a bunch of steals, bunch of traps, that type of deal. The problem is if you play a team the last couple years like Kansas, especially the first year, who has a bunch of guards, skilled players who can handle that, they're just going to pick you apart, it would seem to me. Like the first season, I kind of got it. You're putting together the roster a little bit more at the last second. First year, you don't have that much size. I get it. Last season, though, you have a little bit more size, a different roster, and it just seemed like kind of the same stuff to similar results to me. So this season, I'd just like to see Missouri play a little bit more sound defense. That's just kind of my whole thing. But anyway, sure. Pat, we're going to cut it short there. Thanks for joining me on the show, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, always happy to be back, and I'm going to do the Drinkwitz thing now. M-I-Z.
Z-O-U. Thank you, buddy. And that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Mizzou. Thanks again to Pat for taking some time out of his day. One of the smartest and funniest people I know. Always fun to talk to Pat. Put a big smile on my face this morning. Hopefully it did yours as well. So until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.